New Orleans, a city of mystery, a city that 1 million people proudly call home, at least the ones above ground, because New Orleans is also home to many beings that can't find their way back. Watch as our group of paranormal investigators attempt to discover these lost souls. Join us as we explore New Orleans, the most haunted city in America. In tonight's episode, we take you on a journey into the world of voodoo, a religion that has spawned fear and superstition throughout the world. But voodoo is more than just magical spells and zombies rising from the grave. So come join us as we delve into the mysterious, mystical, and magical world of voodoo.
The most common misconception of voodoo really comes out of Hollywood. And it comes from the fact that, well, frankly, in 1932, they made a movie called White Zombie starring Bela Lugosi. It was one of the first talking movies, and it was very successful. And just like a James Bond movie or something, once Hollywood gets a formula, they're not going to let go of it. Bela Lugosi, George Zucco, and John Carradine, the three of them, made I don't know how many voodoo movies together. My favorite one is one in 1944 called Voodoo Man. In it, George Zucco constantly talks about a voodoo spirit called Rambuna. And basically the plot is that Bela Lugosi wants him to resurrect his wife who's dead. And George Zucco says over and over again, Rambuna can do anything. And for that reason, as far as I'm concerned, Rambuna is the most important of all voodoo spirits, even though he's totally phony, because that's the one most people identify with. And when you make a movie in Hollywood, the purpose of a movie is to sell tickets. To sell tickets, you have to have drama. To have drama, you have to have a good guy and a bad guy. And the zombie never gets to play the good guy.
Zombies? Yes. They are my servants.
And that's why the misconception comes from that. In reality, most of voodoo is very benign. You have a smaller minority, which is like a witch doctor. A witch doctor can control or bribe a spirit, but only spirits that are like politicians, that are somewhat corrupt.
Zombie!
That's the place where you get the sort of like evil in voodoo, if there is any. But in the movies, that's what's dramatic. And so that's what most people identify voodoo as, because most people don't deal with voodoo as an academic discipline. They deal with it through popular culture in the movies. And that's probably the single greatest misconception.
The real voodoo is really a healing art to heal the mind, the body, the soul, and the spirit. Of course, Hollywood's going to present the stereotypes and I guess the sensationalism, but some of the sensationalism is really true and a part of voodoo. As far as the magic, the spells, the curses, the hexes, that's something that's really a part of voodoo. It's not fictitious in reality. But some of the stereotypes are wrong, some of the stereotypes are correct.
The other thing you see is voodoo dolls. Everybody wants to know, because we carry voodoo dolls here, which at least we go through the trouble of getting them handmade from real practitioners. But they all ask, well, how does it work? You put the pin, you stick the pin in the side and someone's side hurts, and you have to stop and explain. No, the purpose of the pin is to pin something to the doll, like a picture of the person or the person's name or something that's been in intimate contact with them, like a piece of their clothing. So the doll represents the person, and then you use the doll to communicate with the voodoo, with the spirit, to ask the spirit to intercede, to help them, usually in one of what I call 4 basic categories of gree-gree. Number 1 is for love. Make someone fall in love with you, make someone stay in love with you, make someone break up so they can fall in love with you. Number 2 is power and domination. That's mostly used by attorneys, believe it or not, because they don't know what a judge or jury is going to do when they go to court. The 3rd category is for luck and finance. That's mostly used by people who go to the casinos. And the 4th category is uncrossing. That's to undo when someone else has put a gree-gree on you, or it's also used for healing.
This is Haunted New Orleans. You're watching Haunted New Orleans.
One of the biggest misconceptions of voodoo is that it is a polytheistic tradition. It is not. It is a monotheistic tradition. we believe in one supreme God, the great creator of all. But our concept of God essentially is that God's not so involved in our everyday secular trials and tribulations. That's really the job of the divine intercessors, collectively known as the Loa.
So we know in occultism that the basic elements of creation are earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. So the Africans deified these natural forces through ritual, through ceremony, through giving these forces energy.
We call upon those particular spirits to intercede on our behalf to effect certain changes or help with certain alignment or help with certain requests that we may need throughout our lives.
Air deals with communication, would be Legba, whereas water would be Urzuli, whereas fire would be Ogun, earth would be Baron Samdi.
The cemetery is the realm of the Gede, who are in Voodoo the dead. Their leader of the dead is the one Loa everyone knows, the skull with a top hat, wears the sunglasses, smokes a cigar. You might recognize him from James Bond movies or rock and roll covers. He's the Baron Samedi, Baron Saturday. He works with life. His colors are white, purple, black, life, death, sexuality. He's the entire circle of life. He's with you when you're aged, he's there when you're born, and he's there when you're creating more life. He's there to help you transition from this life into the next. And the cemetery is his realm. The crossroads of the cemetery is where you'll often find people working, invoking the Baron, the Gede, and through offerings, through ceremonies, offerings of rum, candy, cigars. His wants, needs, and desires are very earthly. He's very, very closely tied to us humans, and he's one of the most beloved of all the Loa.
Papa Legba is the most powerful Loa in the tradition because he is the door opener, the divine messenger between us and the spirit world. So without petitioning him and appeasing him to open up the gates from this world to the spirit world, other spirits, in theory, don't step forward to intercede. So traditionally, we open up all ceremonies to Papa Legba. A veve is a sacred symbol that is used to call down a particular voodoo spirit. So every spirit, for the most part, has their own specific sacred symbol. And in this case, this is a symbol most traditionally used for Papa Legba. So traditionally, Legba is called into a ceremony or a ritual when his veve is, of course, drawn on the floor, traditionally in cornmeal. And then, of course, songs are sung to him, calling him down, welcoming him, asking him to open up the doors and the crossroads from this world to the spirit world to come join us in ceremony. And then he's honored and appeased with gifts or offerings, prayers, again, more songs, music, sometimes drumming. But he's fantastic at bringing forth the best alignment and the best road for you to walk down when you're looking for a massive change and or massive improvement or new situation in your life. Azuli Freda is the namesake of our store, of course, and she is the most beloved Loa of all. She is the Loa of love and passion, beauty and prosperity. So she's the most called upon Loa for the most part because everybody calls upon her for loving relationships, drawing love, healing from love, reconciling with somebody that you love. So she has a lot of uses. She is the most expensive Loa to appease. She's often showered with the finest of everything, you know, fresh cut flowers and pink champagnes and beautiful cloths and silks and laces, jewelry. She loves jewelry, roses, of course, anything beautiful and decadent and sweet. She loves all of that. The Oguns of the tradition remove the serious obstacles out of your way. They're not frivolous, spirits to work with. You really want to petition them when you have a serious issue. You're in danger or somebody's trying to harm you or your family. A series of very bad things have been occurring in your life. Somebody's trying to harm your prosperity or harm your home. The Oguns are the ones who remove these serious negative issues and obstacles and problems out of your life. And they're the great protectors of your prosperity as well. So the Oguns are often called upon if you feel like you're in danger or you work possibly in an industry that puts you more at risk, such as the police or the military, soldiers, firemen, officers, pilots, anybody that really puts their life on the line. Their patron saint are typically the Oguns.
Haunted New Orleans. We'll be right back. Stay tuned for more Haunted New Orleans.
In voodoo, as in every early religion, there is the religious side as well as the magical aspects. Voodoo is a religion, and in New Orleans voodoo, the magical aspect was referred to oftentimes as hoodoo. And in hoodoo, it was kind of a mixture of the voodoo religion, Native American customs, as well as European folk magic. There was so much fear and superstition surrounding the magical aspect of hoodoo that there was a period in time for about 100 years in New Orleans where people were literally killing each other. Such events happened well into the 1960s. One woman found what she thought was salt spread on her doorstep. No one knows really how it got there. In fact, it was common practice back then. Some of the little boys would break up the soft New Orleans bricks and put brick dust on people's doorstep to ward off evil because people were so superstitious. But nonetheless, she found what she believed to be salt and couldn't think of any other explanation that perhaps maybe her husband had put a curse on her. She was so hysterical, her mind started playing games with her. She started imagining that perhaps her husband was having an affair. Perhaps he was trying to kill her. She couldn't quite figure out what was going on, but she worked herself into such a frenzy that one night when he came home to relax after a hard day's work, he was greeted with a gunshot. Jealousy and insecurity over possible affairs was a common theme during the hoodoo hysteria years. One such couple, the Reverend Randall Howard and his wife Lucille, lived a quiet life in New Orleans until Lucille became very insecure, believing that her husband might possibly be having an affair with a woman across town. She feared it so much that she might lose him. She went and visited a local voodoo practitioner, back then called the Root Doctors. He gave her a bag of herbs and told her to put some in her husband's food a little at a time over the next several weeks, and that this would keep him faithful and keep him home. Well, as she prepared his meal that evening, she put a little in, and then she put a little more. She became so angry thinking about him with another woman that she continued to put more and more until she had put the entire bag of herbs into his dinner. She slammed his plate down on the table and watched as he ate. Then suddenly she realized that she probably poisoned him. She became fearful that she might actually have killed him. Ridden with guilt, she dropped to her knees, begging for his forgiveness. He couldn't understand what was wrong. She kept saying, "I've killed you, I've killed you." He said, "I don't understand. What do you mean?" She told him the entire story. She admitted to putting the herbs into his food. She was so convincing that before long, he actually believed too that he would die. She said she couldn't bear the thought of living without him with such guilt and begged him to kill her before he died. The Reverend Howard took Lucille and they went out to the river and sat out on the levee. He was hesitant at first, but she begged. She told him that she would be waiting for him on the other side of the river, not the Mississippi River, but the river of death. Hesitantly, he pulled out the knife and he slit Lucille's throat from ear to ear. She dropped into his lap and bled to death. And then he dropped the knife and he waited to die himself. And he waited and waited. The irony of the story is he didn't die at all. He wasn't poisoned. But he did wish that he had died. He spent the rest of his life in prison for her death. The legend of Lucille says that she still wanders the riverfront, waiting for him to join her.
You're watching Haunted New Orleans. This is Haunted New Orleans.
Everybody knows or accepts that jazz comes from New Orleans. I have my own personal theory about it, and to me it comes out of Congo Square. Voodoo is called the dancing religion, and the reason for that is the object of a voodoo ceremony is to invite the spirit to possess you. You induce the possession using dancing and music. There are various types of voodoo ceremonies, but one of the ones that's better known and more popular is called the Kalinda. And the Kalinda, a spirit's not confined to time or place, but there's certain things that you as a human being can do that a spirit can't do. Specifically, eat, drink, sing, dance, smoke, and have sexual relations. Obviously, the one that gets all the attention is the sexual relations. That being said, do you know what the African word for sex is? It's jazz. That's what jazz means. That's your first hint that jazz comes from voodoo. The second clue comes in Jelly Roll Morton, who the Smithsonian identifies as the inventor of jazz. In fact, when he was born, his father abandoned him. His mother died, I think when he was 8 years old, and he and his 3 sisters went to go live with their grandmother. When he became a musician, his grandmother considered that to be inappropriate, so she kicked him out the house. When she did, he went to go live with his godmother. His godmother was a woman named Eulalie Eckhard, and Eulalie Eckhard was a voodoo queen. Now, he talks about working with her, and he apparently made certain arrangements with her that she would help him throughout his career. For example, when he first tried to get a job, he went to Storyville. She told him to go wait in a saloon there and wait 3 days. On the 3rd day, the maid from Mahogany Hall, which was the most important of the bordellos, shows up and says their piano player got sick and can anyone play the piano? He gets a job, he goes in, he plays his original compositions like Tiger Rag and Wolverine Blues, and that's considered to be the first time jazz was ever played indoors. In fact, the New Orleans Jazz Museum still has the transom from Lulu White's Mahogany Hall, and they consider that to be their primary artifact. But all through his entire life, he talks about that, and then finally, there's an arrangement. It's a type of a zombie, sometimes called the give man zombie, where you deliberately turn over a part of your soul to a voodoo queen who guarantees you luck and success through your life. The only drawback to it is that when she dies, you die. Jelly Roll Morton was 51 years old in 1941, and he was out in Los Angeles recording an album. In the middle of recording, he got bad news. His godmother died. 4 days later, he died of no apparent cause. And that fits exactly the pattern of what we call a give man zombie.
Thanks for joining us for a fascinating look at the world of voodoo. Be sure to join us next time for another episode of Haunted New Orleans.